right, so you wanted to get up to speed on those new USCIS changes, making it easier for kids of U.S. citizens to get citizenship.
Yes.
We dove into the details, and let me tell you, there's some interesting stuff in here.
Yeah.
We're talking like potential life changers for families, especially if you're trying to figure out how to make sure your kids are set up for their future here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. These changes are a big deal, and they're going to impact a lot of families.
Okay, so big picture, USCIS simplified the citizenship process for certain children of U.S. citizens. It's all under something called Section 320 of the Immigration and Nationality Act.
Right.
But let's not get bogged down in the legal jargon. What's at the heart of these changes?
Well, it's about recognizing that families don't always fit neatly into these legal boxes, you know?
Yeah.
USCIS is trying to adapt to the realities of modern families.
Okay.
And make sure that kids aren't penalized for circumstances beyond their control.
So less about ticking boxes, more about looking at the actual family situation.
Yeah.
Tell me more about some of the specific changes that stood out to you.
One of the most impactful changes, I think, is around legal custody.
Okay.
It used to be all about having formal court orders in place.
Right.
But now USCIS recognizes something called de facto custody.
De facto custody. Okay, break that down for me. Let's say you've got a grandparent raising their U.S. citizen grandchild. Does this affect them?
It absolutely could. De facto custody means if a child lives with and is mainly cared for by their U.S. citizen parent, or in this case, grandparent, that can be enough to establish custody for citizenship purposes.
Okay.
So even if there's no formal court order saying the grandparent has legal custody, the child might now be eligible for citizenship.
So that seems like a game changer for families where, the legal paperwork might not be perfect, but it's clear who's actually raising the child.
Exactly. It acknowledges those real-life situations. And this focus on the reality of a child's life also comes up when we look at how USCIS now views private custody agreements between parents.
Wait, so even informal agreements are on the table now?
Yes. USCIS will now consider them.
Wow.
Although it's important to note that they're not giving a free pass to just anything.
Right.
They'll still review these agreements very carefully. But it's a huge step because it shows a willingness to look beyond strict legal definitions and to see what's actually happening in the child's life.
So it's less about being a legal scholar and more about common sense.
Right.
What else changed in terms of how USCIS is looking at things?
Well, they've also clarified the requirements for physical custody.
Okay.
Now, simply residing with the U.S. citizen parent is enough to meet that requirement for citizenship purposes.
Okay, so living with the parent means you meet the requirement.
Exactly.
That seems pretty straightforward. What about situations where custody arrangements get sorted out legally after the child turns 18? Is it too late for them?
That's a great question, and that's where those nunc-pro-tunc orders come in.
Okay.
Imagine a child whose parents finally formalized their custody agreement,
Right.
but it happened after the child's 18th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, those retroactive orders wouldn't have counted for citizenship.
Wow.
Now USCIS accepts them.
So those kids who might have missed out before, because of the timing, they've got a chance now.
Exactly.
That's got to be a relief for a lot of families.
It is.
Any other big changes that we should know about?
Definitely. USCIS has also provided more specific guidance on what it means to derive citizenship under Section 320.
Okay.
This is especially important for children who came to the U.S. as permanent residents and have been living with their U.S. citizen parent.
Okay.
It's all about making sure that fewer children are accidentally excluded from automatic citizenship because of vague interpretations of the law.
So basically, they're trying to clear up any confusion and make sure that if a child should qualify for citizenship, they actually get it. That makes a lot of sense. But what about the oath of allegiance? Is that still required for these kids?
You're right. The oath is still a key part of the process.
Okay.
However, there are exceptions. Children under 14 and those with medical conditions that prevent them from participating don't have to take the oath.
So it sounds like they're trying to balance the formality of the process,
Right.
with the understanding that not every kid can participate in the same way.
Exactly.
This is a lot to take in, but I think it's important for our listeners to really understand why these changes matter. What's the big takeaway here?
I think these changes represent a significant shift in how USCIS approaches citizenship for children of U.S. citizens. It's a move toward a more humane and realistic system, one that recognizes the diverse ways families are formed and ensures that children aren't penalized for circumstances beyond their control.
It's really about recognizing the human element in all of this, right?
Yes.
These aren't just abstract legal cases. These are real families with real hopes and dreams for their kids' futures.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And by simplifying the process for eligible children to gain citizenship, they're not only strengthening families, but also our communities.
Yeah, I like that. It's about belonging. It's
Yeah.
about giving these kids a chance to thrive,
Yeah,
not just survive.
that's right.
But even with these positive changes, I imagine navigating the immigration system can still feel overwhelming for families. What advice would you give to those who are trying to figure out how this all applies to them?
I think the first thing I would say is don't go it alone.
Huh.
Consult with an experienced immigration attorney. They can look at your family's specific situation, guide you through the process, and make sure you're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's.
It's like having a Sherpa to guide you through unfamiliar territory.
Exactly. Immigration law is complex,
Yeah.
and having an expert on your side can make a world of difference. And speaking of experts, USCIS is actually a great resource too.
Oh, okay.
They've got a lot of information on their website about these changes, including detailed guidance and FAQs.
So do your research, but always check with an attorney to be sure you understand how it applies to your specific situation.
Absolutely. Another crucial step is gathering all the necessary documentation.
Okay.
This might include proof of the child's residency evidence of the parent's U.S. citizenship and any relevant custody agreements or court orders.
Right.
Being organized and prepared can really make the process go much smoother.
And if something doesn't make sense, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Right.
Your attorney's there to help you understand all your options.
Absolutely.
Knowledge is power, especially when dealing with something as important as this.
You got it. The more you understand about the process and your rights, the better equipped you'll be to navigate it successfully.
So to sum up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
these new USCIS policies are great news for a lot of families.
Yeah.
They signal a move towards a more just and inclusive approach to citizenship.
I agree.
But it's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Right.
There are still complexities, and it's crucial to seek expert advice and be thorough in your preparation.
Exactly. And remember, these changes only apply to children of U.S. citizens. If you're not a U.S. citizen, the process for obtaining citizenship for your child will be different.
Right. So if you're unsure about your eligibility or what steps to take, an immigration lawyer is your best bet to get the guidance you need.
I agree.
Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more on these new USCIS policy changes. Stay tuned.
Sounds good. Welcome back. We're continuing our deep dive into these USCIS policy changes and what they mean for families.
You know, as we're talking about this,
Mm-hmm.
I keep thinking about the emotional impact.
Yeah.
We've covered the legal nuts and bolts,
Right.
but this has got to be huge for families who've been living with so much uncertainty.
It really is. Imagine the weight lifted off parents who weren't sure if their child would be able to stay in the U.S.
Yeah.
This is about giving those families peace of mind and security.
And for the kids, it's about more than just legal status, right? It's about belonging, feeling secure, being able to plan for their future without that cloud of uncertainty hanging over them.
Absolutely. It allows these children to fully embrace their lives here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they can focus on their education, their passions, contribute to their communities without the constant fear of deportation.
So it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving.
Yeah.
It's about giving these kids a chance to reach their full potential.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that has ripple effects throughout the entire community.
Yeah.
When children feel safe and welcomed, they're more likely to succeed, and that benefits everyone.
Right.
We're talking about stronger families, stronger communities, ultimately a stronger U.S.
I like how you put that. It's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
But even with these positive changes, I imagine navigating the immigration system can still feel overwhelming for families. What advice would you give to those who are trying to figure out how this all applies to them?
Don't go it alone. The first thing I'd say is consult with an experienced immigration attorney. They can look at your family's specific situation, guide you through the process and make sure you're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's.
It's like having a Sherpa to guide you through unfamiliar territory, right?
That's a great way to put it. Immigration law is complex, and having an expert on your side can make a world of difference. And speaking of experts, USCIS is actually a great resource too.
Okay.
They have a lot of information on their website about these changes, including detailed guidance and FAQs.
So do your homework, but always check with an attorney
Yes.
to be sure you understand how it applies to your specific situation.
Absolutely. Another crucial step is gathering all the necessary documentation.
Okay.
This might include proof of the child's residency, evidence of the parent's U.S. citizenship, and any relevant custody agreements or court orders.
Right.
Being organized and prepared can make the process go much smoother.
And if something doesn't make sense, don't be afraid to ask questions. Your attorney is there to help you understand your options.
Exactly.
Knowledge is power, especially when dealing with something as important as this.
You got it.
Yeah.
The more you understand about the process and your rights, the better equipped you'll be to navigate it successfully. So to sum up this part of our deep dive, these new USCIS policies are great news for many families.
They are.
They signal a move toward a more just and inclusive approach to citizenship.
But it's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Right.
There are still complexities.
Yes.
And it's crucial to seek expert advice and be thorough in your preparation.
Exactly. And remember, these changes only apply to children of U.S. citizens. If you're not a U.S. citizen, the process for obtaining citizenship for your child will be different.
Right. So if you're unsure about your eligibility or what steps to take in it, an immigration lawyer is your best bet to get the guidance that you need.
I agree. And as we wrap up this part of our conversation, I think it's important to acknowledge that these changes, while significant, are just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
You're right. These updates are definitely a step in the right direction, but they don't solve every challenge in our immigration system. We're back for the final part of our deep dive into these USCIS policy changes. We've talked about the details and the impact on families. And I'm curious, where do we go from here? What do these changes tell us about the bigger picture of U.S. immigration policy?
That's a great question, and I think one of the most interesting takeaways here is the shift we're seeing toward a more practical and humane approach. These changes show that USCIS is starting to acknowledge the real-life complexities of families and that they're putting the well-being of children front and center.
It definitely feels like they're trying to make the system work for people instead of against them.
Right.
Do you think this could be a sign of more changes to come? Could we see this kind of thinking applied to other areas of immigration law?
I think it's definitely possible. These updates could be a model for how we approach reform in other areas of immigration law that are outdated or just don't reflect how things work in the real world.
Give me an example. What kind of areas are we talking about?
Well, one that immediately comes to mind is family reunification.
Okay.
Right now, there are really long wait times and a ton of complicated procedures that can keep families separated for years.
It's heartbreaking.
It is. So maybe we'll see some momentum toward streamlining that process, cutting down those wait times and making it easier for families to be together. I think that would be a huge win.
It'd be amazing to see families reunited more quickly. What about undocumented immigrants who were brought to the U.S. as children? The dreamers. Do you think these USCIS changes could have any impact on their situation?
That's a really important question. And while these specific changes don't directly address the dreamer population, I do think the principles behind them could influence future policy decisions.
Yeah.
You know, there seems to be a growing understanding that we need to create a system that's fair and that recognizes the contributions of immigrants regardless of how they got here.
So even if it's not an immediate legal change, it could be a sign that the tide is turning, that people are starting to think differently about how we approach these issues.
I think that's a fair assessment. And more broadly, these USCIS changes highlight a crucial point. Immigration isn't just about laws and regulations, it's about people. It's about families, communities, and individual lives.
I like that. Brings it back to the human element.
Yeah.
It reminds us that behind all the legal jargon are real people trying to build a life for themselves and their families.
Exactly. And when we start to see immigration through that lens, it becomes clear that we need policies that are not only enforceable, but also just compassionate.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think we can say that these USCIS policy changes are a really big deal. Not just for the families they directly affect, but for the future of U.S. immigration policy as a whole.
I agree. They represent a step toward a more equitable and humane system, one that values family unity and recognizes the important role that immigrants play in our society.
And as we move forward, I think it's crucial for everyone to stay informed, to engage in thoughtful discussions about these issues, and to advocate for policies that reflect our values of compassion and fairness.
Couldn't agree more. Because at the end of the day, the future of immigration policy is something we all have a stake in.
Yeah.
It's shaped by the choices we make as a society.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking. We'll be back soon with another episode exploring a topic that matters to you. Until then, stay curious and keep learning.
Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel US Immigration News. We hope you are doing great. Well, in today's video, we will be talking about USCIS simplifies citizenship process for children of US citizens with new custody policy changes. USCIS has introduced significant updates to its policies regarding the process by which children of US citizens can automatically acquire US citizenship. These changes, effective November 2024, aim to simplify and clarify the requirements under Section 320 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which allows minor children of US citizens to derive citizenship. The key revisions are designated to address long-standing issues related to legal and physical custody requirements, making the citizenship process more inclusive and accessible for families with informal or delayed custody arrangements. Under the previous rules, children seeking US citizenship under INA Section 320 had to meet strict legal and physical custody requirements. This often meant that former court orders are required to stabilize custody, creating barriers for families who had an informal or non-traditional custody arrangements. The new guidelines expand the definition of legal custody to include situations where children are living with their US citizens. And even if there is no formal court order, this change is particularly beneficial for parents who have never pursued formal custody proceedings yet have had a primary care of their child. It eliminates the need for a lengthy legal process and allows families with informal custody arrangements to move forward with the citizenship application. A major update is the recognition of private custody agreements. In the past, USCIS did not accept these informal arrangements for citizenship purposes, leaving many children of US citizens ineligible for automatic citizenship despite meeting the residency and custodial requirements. Under the new rules, children residing with their US citizens parent under a private custody agreement are now eligible to derive citizenship. This change brings greater recognition to the reality that not all families undergo formal custody proceedings, yet their arrangements are just as valid for citizenship eligibility. Another significant revisions involves the recognition of retroactive custody orders. Previously, once a child turned 18 and any custody orders issued after that age were not considered in determining citizenship eligibility. The new policy reverses this, allowing custody orders issued after a child 18th birthday to still be used for citizenship purposes. This is a crucial update for families who may have faced delays in their legal processes, as it ensures that they are not excluded from the citizenship process due to administrative or procedural delays. Furthermore, the new rules simplify the physical custody requirements. Now, children who physically reside with their US citizen parent are automatically considered to meet the physical custody requirements, even if there is no formal legal determination of custody. This eliminates any confusion or uncertainty regarding a child custody status and ensures that children living with their citizen parents in the US can more easily obtain citizenship. In addition, the policy changes remove the oath of allegiance requirements of children under the age of 14, streamlining the process for younger applicants. However, children aged 14 or older or those with medical conditions will still need to take the oath unless exempt. This video is expected to significantly benefit immigrant families who previously faced barriers to obtaining US citizenship for their children. due to informal custody arrangements, delayed legal processes, or misunderstanding about the requirements. By aligning the legal framework with the realities of modern family dynamics, USCIS aims to reduce administrative burdens, promote family unity, and create a more inclusive path to citizenship for a US citizen, parent, and their children.